Okay, folks, I want to welcome you to another post-game conversation where you get to hear directly from Tribe football alums. For this episode, we have Mr. Chris Garrity. How are you, Chris?
Doing fine, Dante, yourself.
I'm doing well. It's a real pleasure to really, to get to know you over time and then to have an opportunity to have you on here. So I just really want to thank you for the opportunity.
Dante, it's my pleasure. I've watched what you've done with the other alums, the other football players, and I thank you for all you do in that regard. It's good to hear from them. Even Stanley Agiello, who thanked 47,000 people in a 9 minute.
We won't tell everybody. Make sure they watch. Chris, let's get right to it. Tell everybody, what year you graduated, your major, and the position you played.
Yeah, Dante, I graduated in 1982. I played quarterback and I was a sociology major. I was one of those guys trying to figure out what I was going to do and who I was going to be. Um, I grew up in northern New Jersey, small town, Pompton Lakes, very middle class town. I had a beautiful upbringing. I was the oldest of five kids, spread out over 16 years. So there's always a lot of action, a lot of ball games, and a small school. It was 800 people. I think so. We had 200 in our class. I remember. I think we had eight guys playing both ways my senior year in high school. So it wasn't Group A or 4A type program that you see in some other states. But a small school like that, you got to play a lot of sports, got a lot of great opportunity. So it was a very nice upbringing. I was very fortunate, great family structure. Those things are not a given, so I feel as I mentioned, very fortunate in that regard.
That's awesome. So thank you for sharing. So coming from New Jersey, how did you make your way and find your way to William and Mary?
So as a very direct answer to that, I was going to go where the scholarship offers were. There weren't a multitude of them, right? I think I had three scholarship offers. One was from Northwestern, and I had never been on a plane before I flew out there. It was a beautiful campus, great school. Was about 30 below wind chill in January. It was a little brisk. I did go to visit William and Mary, and like any program, they want to try to get you to agree and sign when you're there.
Sure.
I begged off. I said I have one more visit, Boston University, the following weekend, and I said I will let you know that following Monday. And that next weekend, I didn't go to Boston University because there was a blizzard. This would be the blizzard of '78. People of a certain age might remember that. And Dante, I think you run your own business. You're in sales, but it was my first impending doom call. I got a call on Monday saying, "What's your decision?" I said, "Well, there was a blizzard. I didn't go. I'll go up next week. I'll let you know." And we're not really sure we'll have a scholarship for you tomorrow. And the phone hung up. So um, it was a couple of days of kicking it around with my family and the coach. But obviously, I think I made the right decision. Ralph Kirchenheider was recruiting me as a very good man. Did a lot of good things at Muhlenberg, I think, after he left William and Mary. But that's how I ended up at William and Mary. So it was going to be one of those three schools, frankly.
And there's a blizzard somewhere involved in your decision. That's awesome.
That's right. It might have been a weather. You talk about climate change. There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so you show up at William and Mary, and I don't know if everyone knows, but Coach Laycock was not your coach. Tell us about your experience at William and Mary.
Yep. If you're old enough to play in the middle part of the last century, you can predate Jimmy's time there. There are a few of us left. My time there was fabulous, and we talked about this a little earlier, Dante. I went down there and played for a coach by the name of Jim Root, and a lot of people talk about who was coaching Jimmy when he was at the college, and Jim Root had a couple of pretty good coaches as well. I think he went to Miami of Ohio, and he was coached by Woody Hayes and I believe Ara Parsegan, if I'm not mistaken. Right? So he had some good coaching tree stuff going on there. Jim Root was more of a Woody Hayes guy. I mean, that offense that we ran back then was a lot of two tights, one wide out. They were running veer. I think I punted as a freshman. We had a very good senior quarterback, Tommy Rosance. And then there were three of us kind of battling for the spot. I think I started my sophomore year. Obviously, I shared some time. There's some games I did not perform well. And I think some ways Jimmye, I helped him get that job. Maybe by the way I played as a sophomore a little bit. I'd like to say that to him.
Yeah, he owes you. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. He owes
right. Yeah.
And so it was a bit of a transition, right? Because you were going from a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type deal to where Jimmye came in, and then we really started throwing the ball a little bit. It probably took us a couple of years to kind of get the athletes in there that you're looking to do that's going to best fit that offense. So it was listen, it was difficult. It was pressure packed. You knew things weren't going well. You're dealing through adversity. And but things certainly started taking an uptick the last couple of years down there, program wise.
That is so cool, and I love hearing those stories. Especially, you had a couple really, really good ones. Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, I think I've told this to my cohorts. So Jimmye came in, I believe it was 1980. And the winter workouts were not easy, as I recall. We were thinning the herd a little bit. So we didn't have a whole bunch of numbers going in or a bunch of guys coming back. Into that first year, we did not start out well. I think we were 0-4. We were playing Dartmouth at home. Like we were losing 14-0. So we were a Division I program losing to an Ivy League school. The next week, we were due to play Rutgers up there. Rutgers was undefeated, and they were playing number 1 ranked Alabama at the Meadowlands, coached by Bear Bryant. Now, mind you, Alabama had not lost at this point in like 25 games. And whatever, it might have been 14-10, 14-7. We were losing. And they're reading scores from around the country. I'm on the sidelines with defenses out there. And it's 17-13, 13-10 in the third period. One, I think Alabama might have been barely winning. But I remember thinking to myself, Dante, I'm an optimistic guy. But I remember thinking, we're struggling with Dartmouth. We have to play Rutgers next week. They're hanging there with Alabama, who hadn't lost a game in a couple of years. They'd won the championship the year before. It's the old John Adams line, right? Facts are stubborn things. I remember thinking. But we ended up coming back to win that game. I think Alabama did end up beating Rutgers 17-13. And then we went up there the next week. It was a little bit rainy. We had a bunch of guys from Jersey, a bunch of guys from Pennsylvania. And we ended up beating them in a very close game. They might have been a little bit flat-footed. I remember our defense was tremendous. 4 or 5 turnovers. Steve McNamee had a bunch of picks. Paul Tyner. So that was an incredible couple weeks, those weeks. I don't think we won a game the rest of that year.
It doesn't matter.
No, it didn't matter. If you're from New Jersey, you won the game.
Right.
That matter, right?
Yeah.
There's that game at the end of the year that matters as well. But
Sure.
that was a memorable couple of weeks for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that story. And it's funny, I've heard it from different guys that we've interviewed, right? So everybody has a different perspective around it, but it never gets old. So I appreciate it.
No, and as time goes by, their stories get more better.
Oh yeah,
get better.
Rutgers gets better. You guys, yeah.
Rutgers is ranked number 2. Yeah.
Okay, so at some point after your illustrious career, you graduated from William & Mary. Tell us about your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, so I was in the Redskin camp as a free agent. I think I was there to early September. Dan Henning was there, and Joe Gibbs, who I've run into upon occasion and had some nice conversations with him over the years. This was the year I believe they won the Super Bowl in 1982. So it was a Theismann Art Monk group. Yep. And then Dante, the USFL was starting up, and I had an opportunity to go play for the Washington franchise. But at that time, Canada, the Canadian League, would look at some of the last cuts in the NFL, and they would bring you up for a 2-week tryout. So USFL wasn't starting to January. So I said, I certainly have nothing to lose. I'll go up and take a look what's going on in Canada, see if there's an opportunity. So I'm a guy from New Jersey. I was going up to Edmonton, Alberta. Edmonton is 400 miles north of Idaho. There's no Hoboken, there's no Annandale. It's like a Wizard of Oz. It's a city sticking out of the wheat fields of Canada. And again, I'm a young kid. I go up there. I'm thinking I probably have a good shot. I almost made the Redskins, and there's a guy up there throwing a football, Dante, like nothing I've ever seen. Obviously, Joe Theismann is very good, but this was Warren Moon.
Oh,
Warren Moon was about 25, 26. I think he was winning 5 Grey Cups in a row. I don't think I've ever seen anybody throw a ball like that. And that's when you start, it's not going to be easy to get a job at this level. So it's a little competitive. And I was with the Federals for some the next year and with the New Jersey Generals the year after. And I thought at that point, you need to get a more traditional job. So I did a couple of things. I ended up working, Dante, really coming out of school in corporate media for the better part of 30 years. I was working for the New York Times on the advertising side. I worked in New York. I opened an office down in Atlanta with my Jersey accent in Atlanta. That went over
they
well.
loved it. I'm sure they loved it.
I did. And I ran their Midwest office for a number of years as well out in Chicago. So I had a nice career. I'm doing a couple of things. I moved back to Jersey here for some family support. My mom and dad had some health issues. And it's good to kind of reconnect with, as I mentioned, Stanley Yagiello and some of the other guys back here on the East Coast that I played ball with. So I've had a blessed life, quite frankly.
It's been awesome story,
Sure has.
Chris.
Sure has.
I just really appreciate it, and again, appreciate your time. Is there anything you want to leave with folks before we hang it up here?
Yeah, I think looking back and looking forward, but looking back, I was 17 when I walked on that campus. I was a pretty naive kid, I remember, and it was 4 years. I thought, frankly, was quite transformational. I mean, not only academically being challenged, but physically being challenged, growing up into a young adult. It was a beautiful time in a different part of the country. And the best thing coming out of that, Dante, is I have lifelong friends that I am in contact with, if not daily, on a weekly basis. I try to get down once or twice a year, depending on where I was living. Chicago is a little bit different than Jersey. But these are lifelong friends. I think, no matter what direction you kind of head off in your adult life, I think when you get back together with those guys and you have those shared memories in those formative years, I think that has a special place in that matrix, and that's something that's never forgotten. And it's nice to get back together with everybody when we can.
That's awesome.
And obviously, we try to do that as best we can.
That is so great. Yes, and that's the power of videos like this, and tailgates, and going to games. It's the network and building the camaraderie. And I love it. And as I was telling you before we got on, I need to do a better job of continuing to, invest because it pays huge dividends. And so, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to meeting you in person, obviously.
Yep,
And
Dante, same here. And again, I would be remiss if I did not thank you again for what you do for the Tribe Nation. And not only that, you just self-critique yourself in the middle of this video. I'm very impressed. You do a great investment. You can always do more. You can always do more.
message.
I don't think anybody's complaining.
Well, thanks, Chris.
Have yourself a nice afternoon, Dante. Thank you.